it's going to be recorded and you can watch it later. So just keep in mind that we are recording at this point. And next, I'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. This is something that we're doing in our CJCC meetings, just to honor the traditional owners of the land that we currently reside on. So I'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional homelands of the Salish, Kootenai, and Pend Oreille, and to acknowledge those tribes' contributions to area both historically and currently. I also am going to introduce myself. I think I recognize a lot of names on the participant list, but in case you don't know me, my name is Kristen Jordan, and I am the project director for the Criminal Justice Services Division. We have just changed our name recently. We were calling ourselves the CJCC department, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council department, and realized that's a little confusing because we actually provide support for the CJCC, but we are not the CJCC. So again, our new department is called the Criminal Justice Services Division. And we're a small yet mighty division. We've got 3 of us. We've got Quinn Ziegler, who is the data analyst for the division, and I see he's on the call. And we've got Laurel Hess, who is our public safety assessment coordinator, and she's also on the call. Basically, this, what is the aim of today? The aim of today is to try and seek community input regarding a grant that we get to reapply for. A lot of you would have heard of the grant that our division is managing. It's a grant from the MacArthur Foundation for their Safety and Justice Challenge grant. And we're looking for input from you guys, from anybody who's got an idea about what they think belongs in this new grant application. The Safety and Justice Challenge has some pretty specific focal points or areas of focus. They want any grant initiatives to safely reduce jail populations and to also address ethnic and racial disparities. This renewal grant is due at the end of September. We received the first iteration of the grant in November of 2018 for $700,000. With that $700,000, we have a bunch of strategies that our department and various stakeholders have been working on. And with this renewal grant, we have an opportunity to get up to $700,000 more. So we're looking at $1.4 million from the MacArthur Foundation Safety and Justice Challenge that we could potentially invest into our criminal justice system. Here locally in Missoula. It's an extraordinary opportunity. Missoula County is the smallest jurisdiction in the Safety and Justice Challenge, and it's an extraordinary opportunity to have money like this to spend in this way. For context, I thought I would cover the existing strategies that we have through the grant that we got in November of 2018. I wanted to provide this context and an update on these strategies just so you can see what went into the original grant, and maybe it'll help you think of new ideas for this renewal grant, or build on strategies that are in our current grant. Just basically, like I said, some context. I'm going to share my screen because I wanted to show you guys the strategies as I read through them. Janae, I can see you, and you're the only one with your thing on. Can you see that okay? Yep, cool. All right, so this is basically the final strategies for our existing MacArthur grant. And so I'm going to start here at strategy 1 and just give you guys an update, a real brief update about where these are up to. With the case processing efficiencies, this initiative is meant to reduce the time it takes cases to move through district court. We're developing a plan through interviews with district court judges and clerks of court and assessments to create a new policy that will ensure those with felony charges awaiting trial and custody have a reduced length of stay pre-trial. This is only to reduce the pre-trial time, not sentencing time. So this is part of safely reducing jail populations. If we can get people through the court system quicker, then they don't sit in jail in a pretrial status as long. So that is what counts for safely reducing jail populations, or part of what counts. This one is ongoing with a draft policy to be ready for review by the end of summer. So you'll see there's a bunch of timelines and whatnot. I'm not really going to cover those in this brief update. And each strategy comes with the money that was allocated for that. Initiative 2, sorry, under strategy 1. Oh, sorry, I apologize. I'm getting myself confused. So strategy 1 case processing efficiencies, and then initiative 1 is to shorten the time it takes people to get through court. Initiative 2 is to create the jail review team. This has been a weekly meeting, though held via email, where our division generates a list of those currently at the jail in a pretrial status, meaning they've not yet been found guilty, for review by a group that consists of our chief deputy public defender, a city prosecutor, a county attorney representative, a representative from the jail, and our Western Bureau chief of probation and parole. Upon review, the team will work to make a recommendation to the sitting judge for early pretrial release of a defendant. So these are folks that may be sitting in jail who's something's changed about their case, and instead of waiting for their next court date, we can actually sit and look at these in these weekly meetings and make an early recommendation if it's appropriate. And this group's identified procedural issues, which will be put forward for consideration by the CJCC in improving efficiencies, but's not yet been able to make any recommendations for early release due to varying views on who should be considered and why. Generally, as the details of the case relate to public safety. So we've been meeting, there were a couple of recommendations for early release back in January, but we haven't been able to make any recommendations for release, largely due to the unavailability of services for these folks in pretrial to go to get the help they need. So we keep them in jail because we don't have the services available to recommend them to. Initiative 3 is to reduce the time from preliminary hearing to arraignment. This has been done through collaboration between Justice Court and Municipal Court. Time from initial appearance to preliminary hearing for those in custody in a pretrial status has been reduced to 10 days on average, which down from 14. This directly reduces our pretrial jail population by tightening up court processes. Initiative 4 is to reduce time for assignment of defense counsel. This has been done. Our folks, our defendants are getting defense counsel pretty quickly, and so this is complete with monitoring in place, and we're just checking to see if there's any outliers related to folks having to wait a bit longer to get a lawyer. Moving on to strategy 2, this is implementing front-end jail diversion with prosecution. Basically, this is a diversion program that sits in our county attorney's office. They call it the Calibrate program. This program was developed to assist first-time nonviolent offenders to avoid court and potential criminal records. Each participant has a treatment plan specific to their needs and related to their charges. Upon successful completion, all charges are dropped. This strategy is complete and has established data metrics and reporting to track progress and efficiencies. There are currently about 28 participants in the program, and 2 have graduated already, though I think my numbers are a little, I need to update my numbers on that. They average around 30 people in their program. Strategy 3 is increasing the use of the public safety assessment tool. So this project relates to providing judges additional information about a defendant's risk of rearrest or failure to appear if the defendant is released pretrial. So instead of keeping him in jail to avoid potential FTAs or new arrests, we have a risk assessment tool that's meant to calculate the risk of these people. If they get a certain score, then they're less likely to get a pretrial, a failure to appear or a new arrest. And, oh, sorry, more people want in the waiting room and I cannot multitask. Excuse me for a minute. I think lesson learned, I should probably have somebody work in the back end of this. So apologies for that. So this is an interesting project. So the tool provides, yes, so Montana has implemented a pilot project with this risk tool in 6 counties. There are concerns about how data is being captured across all of the sites, of which is then being used to run performance reports. Our department's been working closely with the Office of Court Administrators. Oh boy, somebody needs to turn their phone off. Sorry about that. The Office of Court Administrators to address our concerns. Currently, we feel the data collected is not robust enough to inform an accurate account of how the pilot project is going, let alone do a validation of the tool specific to Montana or Missoula. Strategy 4 is to provide outreach and education about Indigenous cultures and racial disparities. So under this, there's a few different initiatives. The first is to continue cultural programming in the Missoula County Detention Facility. what that entailed was hiring a Native American liaison. And so this is a person who is a Native American with a master's level social worker, licensed clinical therapy, and an LAC. We had a person in that position who took another position. It was Ivan McDonald, and so he's taken another position in All Nations. We were going to try and rehire the position, but due to COVID, we were told that this position can't get back into the jail. So we need to reallocate about a year's worth of funds in our existing budget, which means we've got money right now to figure out what to do with, around 50 to 100,000, give or take. So yeah, this one's been a bit disappointing just because we lost a great guy and then we couldn't refill the position. Initiative 2 is to offer trauma-informed training to participating agencies. This is ongoing with law enforcement. We were hoping to have a rollout in the fall of 2020, but again, COVID's really affected this. We were going to have a face-to-face 3-day rotational training for law enforcement to come to where they could get continuing ed credit and pick a time that works best for them, just given their crazy schedules. But again, COVID has really affected this. But we do have training money available for the Sheriff's Department and the Police Department if they want to do trauma-informed training or implicit bias training, which is the next initiative. So again, this is like the trauma-informed training where we had a plan and it kind of got off track with COVID. But I want to emphasize we've got money for training for law enforcement. So if you're ever in a conversation with law enforcement, let them know, and it could be as much as it can be more than what we've allocated just due to the need that we need to reallocate some funds. And then finally, strategy 5, this is a big one. Before I got started, before anybody in our department actually got started, the MacArthur Foundation came in and did a sequential intercept mapping project, which is basically it's a gap analysis where you look at the intersection of different law enforcement, different legal intercepts and what's available in the mental health space in each intercept. So it starts with a 911 call or crisis. So what kind of mental health services are available when people are in crisis? And then it moves on to an intercept 1, which is potentially interacting with law enforcement. So what services are available for folks who are at the point where law enforcement needs to get involved, but the folks are having a mental health crisis. And, a big answer to this is the mobile crisis team that'll be able to just kind of intercept some of those mental health related calls. And so in this report, we have a bunch of strategies that came out of it. So some of the things that we're working on within that sequential intercept mapping recommendation project is establishing standardized metrics and data sharing across agencies. We've been able to do that with some agencies, but we still have not been able to find a comfortable way to access law enforcement data. We'd really like to be able to see arrest data, but we also understand that there are hesitations behind sharing that data, and we'd really like to find a way to move forward because we need to find out what's happening in arrests and look for trends. And some of the trends may shed a negative light on practices, but we would like to really emphasize that we're not trying to throw anybody under the bus. We actually want to look at trends, and if the data says that we're not doing something as well as we could be, we'd like to use the data to do something better and not shame or punish people because of what the data says. We're also working on increasing continuity of healthcare between the emergency room and jail. The homeless and housing intervention strategies count underneath this initiative, so the 10-year plan to end homelessness. Improve intensity and availability of care. So again, this is where the mobile crisis team comes in. So we're kind of chipping away at some of these strategies and still have a lot of work to do. So that's my brief update on our strategies. I guess what I might do is ask if anybody has any questions about the existing strategies before I move on to the next part of this forum.
Is this available to us?
It is. Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry, was that Jenna? That was Jenna. Okay. Yep. So it's on our website, but I can send it out to the group as well.
Please, that would be great.
Of course. Any other questions before I move on? Okay, so, basically what I'd like to do is open this up for discussion. I don't have a format that I want to follow, other than I don't think any idea is too crazy. We are looking at asking for the maximum amount we're allowed to, which is $700,000. We have a couple of big ideas brewing, but we don't have enough. And I'd like to also remind folks that this grant really, all the strategies either have to safely reduce jail populations and or address ethnic and racial disparities. So I'd just like to ask folks to remain respectful and take turns speaking. And otherwise, I want to open it up. I don't know if anybody has any ideas. That was the point of this forum, and I'd love to hear what you got to say.
Hey, Kristen, this is Anne. Thank you for that run through. That was really helpful. I'm really new to this world, so I'm really here trying to learn. The question I would have is the training that you said that was going to be available that got waylaid by COVID, the anti-bias training, and I wonder if there's an opportunity to expand the audience for that training in future work and ask for money to support additional training for anyone involved in any of the systems that working towards improving.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And something I failed to mention is that when we were, because I was working with a representative from the Sheriff's Department and the Police Department, and we were going to open it up to the public, but with the emphasis of trying to make it accessible to law enforcement, because they've got wacky schedules, and it's nice when you can get continuing ed credits. So, but yeah, it would be available for everyone.
I'm sorry, this is Marilyn Marler. I'm sorry I joined a few minutes late and I missed.
Hi, Marilyn.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Anne. Hi, Connie. I look forward to getting the document. That was a ton of stuff you just reviewed.
Yeah,
so
it is.
Thank you. On the previous question of Anne about trainings that are available, and I know that COVID has been disrupting everything in the world. Some other people on the call might be also enrolled in a not-for-credit class at the University of Montana that I'm taking. That's taught by Dr. Tobin Shearer on understanding racism and dismantling racism. And the was able to offer this to everybody who wants to take it for $75. And I'm finding it to be pretty high quality course. And I know that Dr. Shearer and his partner have started offering similar trainings via, like they set up a nonprofit consulting agency specifically because there's so much demand for this, but that might address COVID teaching, continuing ed credits, and having like different groups taking it together. Like I understand that you might not want to have cops taking it with people who are adversarial to cops or whatever, you know, or insert any other group in there you want to have. I am coming to this with not very much experience, except that I have had family members in jail. I have a family member who's a cop. And when I served on city council, I served for 12 years on city council. During that time, we adopted a jail diversion plan. And I just wanted to make sure that you had that. I think you do. Great. And some of the things I was surprised at how small costs they were per person, like ankle bracelets or sobriety courses, like inexpensive on a per person basis, but yet a lot of people just didn't even have $50 to pay for a class, and so they'd end up back in jail, or ankle bracelets, etc. And then even though it's a little bit per person, it scales up really quickly when you're talking about the number of people that need it. So maybe some of those things, specific things about sobriety and individual diversion could be.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that we're kind of looking at behind the scenes, which I guess is probably important to share, but it's not been defined or I guess agreed to yet, is looking at programming in the jail. I'm not saying that, you know, there needs to be something done, but I do think it would be great to look at the programming and see if we can't bring in some of the stuff that is data informed and within best practices for what really helps folks in the pretrial space, because what the research shows, or even folks who are sentenced, because what really the research shows is that these folks really need help kind of with emotional intelligence. Like that has had a lot of bang for buck. So figuring out how to identify, name, and manage your emotions, how to think before you act, just basic decision-making skills and emotional management is where the data is showing really good programming sits. And I'm sure other folks have ideas as to, I see Jana's head going up and down. But then, you know, research also shows that a really effective way to reduce recidivism is to provide housing support and peer support specialists. So those two big things, which really isn't a lot to ask, show a marked decrease in recidivism. And there's probably others as well. That's just kind of some of the stuff I picked up through my research. But so any wild ideas, you know, would it be interesting to put money into the grant to do an assessment of our programming at the jail, or, you know, like it's wide open what we could ask for. It does, of course, the next step is the stakeholder engagement, because we don't have any, I'm guessing we don't have any law enforcement on the line. We definitely I don't think we want to do things to them. We'd like to do things with them. So if we find these strategies, to then go talk to the folks that are involved in the strategy to make sure that it's something they can accommodate and that they're willing to be a part of. So it can get a little tricky when you want to ask for something and then keeping in mind who the stakeholder is. But
Kristen, along the idea of programming, it might be worth looking at Gallatin County's programming. My dim understanding is it's been pretty extensive for the last 10 years compared to ours. They have a facility that is designed for programming. We do not. That's a cost issue. Okay. But one of the things they're able to do, I think, because of their facility, is to incorporate a lot more inside programming safely. And so at least it's worth knowing if we could do more, and if there's a reasonable comparison that is law enforcement based, not nice community member based. And I'm sure Gallatin County would just love to tell you all about it.
I would love to hear all about it.
I know. I have a question about the jail review team having not being able to find consensus, and you said it has to do with unavailability of services. If you're going to divert somebody or do an early release and there's nowhere they can go that's going to work, you can't do it.
I mean, that's not always the reason, but it is a consistent theme, and there's nothing they can do about it. If you have somebody with really critical mental health issues who their mental health affects their ability to not commit crime, then you need to do work to address the underlying mental health issue.
Can you, but is there at least some list of what those should be, so that that might form a basis? I'm thinking particularly about mental health and wraparound services, which is what my group's talking about.
Okay. Sorry, Jana, I just saw your chat. Can you see what you wanted to see?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it Janaea?
We need
Sorry.
to see the screen, or can we see each other better? People may see the screen. I guess that's a vote rather than gallery view.
Yeah, I guess you need to tell me what to do. So you want to see more faces?
I always want to see more faces.
I didn't realize I could control that side of things, so you have to tell me what to do. This is such a new experience.
You'd have to stop screen share.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. Stop share. Thank you. How's that?
Well, it's better for those of us who decide to be on versus all the black screens. That's okay. Better.
Yeah. Great. And Judge Halligan and Representative Dudek, I just wanted to let you know that we are recording this session. I can't imagine there's going to be anything untoward in this. It's just so that we can share it on our YouTube channel for people who couldn't come, because I had a few folks reach out to me and ask if that was going to be an option. So just wanted to let you know we're recording. And what we went over was kind of the point of this chat, which is, you know, we have an opportunity to apply for $700,000 for initiatives related to safely reducing our jail population and addressing ethnic and racial disparities. And then I gave a brief overview of where we're at with our existing strategies, which I know Judge Halligan probably knows very well. And Representative Dudek, I'm happy to share that with you at another time if you'd like. So, and now we're having just an open dialogue about wild ideas that we could put into our grant. I think I was about to talk about some of the things that we had in mind. So one of them is jail programming, maybe looking at what we could do in the space of jail programming, but also with the emphasis that we have to work with the Sheriff's Department to have success in that space. Another thing that we're looking at is a Native American diversion team, which would be culturally specific approaches to reducing recidivism, reducing criminal justice involvement in the first place, and ensuring that resources available are culturally relevant. I'd also really like to look into a Native American court, probably a treatment court. There's one up in Great Falls that's had really interesting success. It's been small, but the folks who graduated from that had a really great experience. And again, I'm a scientist by trade, and so I always talk about research. But the research shows we've got to start implementing more Native American-based practices in addressing criminal justice-involved Native Americans. It just doesn't work to keep. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Senator.
Can I ask you a question relative to that? So,
yes.
I mean, I don't recognize any of the names of people who are on here as Native American, although there may be. So what kind of involvement of particularly the Indian community, have you had in trying to think through and plan this out? Is Heather Cahoon involved in this? Who else is involved in it? And
yeah, I had so Heather Cahoon hasn't been directly involved, but we had an amazing chat the other day, and she sent me all the papers that she wrote when she was with the Montana Policy Board. I'm forgetting the name.
Excellent. Yeah, the budget.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I haven't had a chance to look through those yet, but she's like, it's all in there. Basically, you could just take all of the recommendations and put them in your grant, which I'm super excited about. But again, this is a consensus. This is a community decision of what goes into the grant. And then, yes, I've been working with Ann Miller and Maylin Smith from CSKT, so they're tribal prosecutor and tribal defender, I think in that order. And then really working closely with All Nations. The executive director, Deshane Barnett, has just been a fantastic supportive resource who's always able to talk. And so we had an initial meeting about the diversion team, those three folks who were really supportive about it. And when I told Heather Cahoon about it, she was really excited about it as well. So in one thing
at the state level as well.
Great.
And so that's how we've kind of gotten into this thing. But one of the interest areas, you know, having 30% of the Missoula jail population be Native is about what the women's prison is. So I think one of the look at is how to separate out women from men in this, since the women who are in this system are most likely also to be victims of sexual assault, even coming into it. So the trauma issues are significantly different than in the both non-Native population and between men and women. And so considering some kind of and actually I was talking to Cynthia Wolken about this, there are some interesting programs in Canada, particularly targeting Native women that you might want to look at or talk to her about.
Okay.
As I said, if there's one thing we might end up trying to do is at the state level is, what about some model programs that try to specifically target Native women at young Native women, diversion. And I know from growing up on a reservation and my time I work on reservations, there's so limited resources there. So they end up in jail. Yeah. So we really focus on almost the prevention diversion aspect to this to keep women out of it and to catch early things where we can give support and resources so that they don't end up not just in the Missoula jail, but in the state prison.
Yep. Great. Yeah, I'll look into those Canadian models, because I mean that's a really good point, that there are still distinctions within distinctions. And so if we're doing culturally relevant programming, but there's a need to address male and female, men and women's differences, that's important too. And I hadn't thought of that, so thank you.
And most of the women, young women, are going to be young mothers on top of it. So I know when we were talking about how to design the women's prison back when we first built it, programming that really recognizes and works with women as mothers of young, often young children too. So there's a special need there around support that's just quite different than it is for men. But
yeah,
I'm extremely interested in that for the state level as well as for here.
I'm excited you're interested.
I am.
One thing I did want to just say, just in all transparency, is that the current strategies addressing ethnic and racial disparities in our existing grant have fallen far short of doing anything constructive. And it's been kind of a variety of reasons why, but just, you know, full transparency, we have not been able to make a dent in addressing ethnic and racial disparities with our current grant. And that's been really disappointing and something I do not want to have happen in our renewal grant. So, Any other thoughts?
Why do you think that is? Can you tell me why that is? Is it because the right people aren't at the table, or there isn't enough ideas, or there's not enough data? I mean, all the data sucks on this kind of, but.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you my version of what happened. The strategies were identified before any of us got our jobs in our current division. I don't think all of the people were at the table that needed to be, and I don't want to, it's not anybody's fault. It just wasn't, you know, we had a timeline put on us by the MacArthur Foundation to find these strategies. I don't know if there was any Native American representation at those discussions. And then, you know, one of the biggest strategies was to hire a Native American liaison who was a Native American. We had a fellow in the position, and he is Native American, and he has an MSW and about to finish his LAC. And he took another job at All Nations, and then, so the position was empty. And then due to COVID, we've not been able to refill the position because the jail won't let that person come back, that position back into the jail during COVID. And then with the trainings, COVID just totally, put a wrench in those. We're going to probably have to make them virtual now, which we weren't going to do before. And so that's a whole another level of restructuring. And there's probably other reasons too, but that's my initial thoughts on what happened in that space. And, you know, one thing too, the MacArthur Foundation has a lot of data for, you know, African Americans and basically people of color, but not Native Americans. Yep. And so suddenly what happened is Missoula County became the expert on strategies related to Native Americans. And I'm like, no, like, we need your help with that, or we need our community's help with that, because we are not the experts. And then I see Dave's asked a really great question. And Anne, did you have something you wanted to say as well?
Oh, go to Dave first. I've already asked. I want to make sure.
Okay. So Dave Wall put in our chat window, could we use money for public outreach, public education? It sounds like we need to get the word out. And yeah, definitely. So the MacArthur grant wants us to focus on those two things, which is jail reduction and ethnic and racial disparities. But underneath it, basically community engagement is like the third pillar of MacArthur grant work. And it's been a challenge. So kind of spending the first year figuring out who's doing what. Putting our CJCC together, which I didn't talk about, I think a lot of people know what it is, but the CJCC stands for Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and it's a policy advisory board that's made up of area electeds and agency executives. So Judge Halligan is our chair. We've got Lori Francis from Partnerships Health on the line, and she's a voting member. Ann Hughes subs for Josh Slotnick when he can't come in. So we've got a few voting members and alternates just in this meeting right now.
Hey, Kristen?
Yeah, but yeah.
Just to kind of continue with the public outreach, if there's some money we can put aside to actually start a, say, public relations campaign and put together a bid, or probably wouldn't need an RFP, it wouldn't be that expensive, but some kind of bid together for an outside entity to actually do a campaign. That way we can get the word into more people's
yeah, you know, and I think you're on the line before that, but we've got unallocated funds in our existing grant that I need to have allocated before I submit the renewal grant. And oddly enough, that's been challenging as well. Trying to find something that fits within COVID, within a certain, you know, money allocation that meets the criteria of the grant. But I think that would fit in perfectly, Dave, and it's something we could do right now and allocate existing funds. So thank you.
Let me know if you need help getting that together. That's what I do.
Help.
Yeah, that's what I do. We can talk about it.
Thank you, Dave.
Kristen, if you're going to do that, do you have enough data? Because I think people are woefully uninformed about things that maybe some of us know about, the numbers of people, you know, with mental health issues who could be released safely. I don't know how the data's coming, but a more data-driven, not just nice words approach might help get through to people.
I mean, we do have, I think you probably are as aware as anyone about what data we have access to. And I know that's a leading question where I meant to talk about it. So I'll just skip to that space. But yeah, we do have data related to demographics of our jail population, whether they're pretrial or sentenced. And we've got data related to how long it takes to get through the court system. We have data related to, you know, best practices, like what other jurisdictions are doing in the criminal justice reform space that maybe Missoula County might want to think about. I'm getting a practicum student from the School of Social Work who's going to do a gap analysis in restorative justice for the next school year and end up giving a presentation to the CJCC at the end of the year. So I'll be really curious to see what she comes up with. You know, ideally restorative justice is a system-wide approach, but we've got a system and we're going to have to plug in bits and pieces of restorative justice where we can, if we can, and if there's an appetite for that. So yeah, I guess in a nutshell, we have data, we're getting data. Quinn just did a really great presentation with one of our consultants about what's happening in our jail right now, which I think was really informative. There's work to be done in that space too that, you know, we just need to get onto. So yeah, we're getting there. Thank you, Jenna. Lori,
Kristen.
Sorry, go ahead, Janae.
So I'm just wondering if do we have the ability at all? So you were talking about how some of those goals were hard to reach because of the lack of services available to people trying to come out of jail. And so I'm wondering what capacity we have to help develop that in Missoula, I guess. Is that something that this grant could help with? And I ask that because, as you know, I was working on a reentry program with Word before they closed. Working specifically on a women's reentry program. And now I'm working with Crosswinds, and right now we are in the process of trying to start an IOP program that's specific to reentry. And then also, you know, have the sober living houses and working towards turning that into a 3-1 facility. And we've been discussing, you know, we want to offer those IAOP services to the residents that we have living in the sober living houses. Can you
tell everybody what IAOP is real quick?
Sure, it's intensive outpatient treatment.
Thank you.
So it is addiction based currently. Okay. Once we start the 3-1, we'll also offer more wraparound services. So we'll be offering mental health, employment coordination. We are actually doing a little bit of that stuff in the sober living houses right now.
Yep.
But, you know, I know that Sherry also with Stepping Stones, I believe is trying to start a 3-1. And just thinking about how we can support agencies that are, you know, trying to build those services that we need to connect people with in jail. And then also it reduces recidivism. So when we have people coming out of incarceration, whether it's from, you know, prison or from the jail, that we're offering them services so that they're not reoffending and returning to.
Yeah. Well, yes. Sorry, just real quick, Kim. I think the grant could cover stuff like that. What I'm realizing I want to do is put together just a bit of a template for when people have specific ideas like this, where you already know perhaps what the staffing is going to look like and what program you're going to use and how much it might cost, and potentially, you know, we need to find potentially a number of how many people it might help. But yeah, there's a lot of interest in building up those services. I can say the jail review members are really challenged by, and we've got a jail review team member here, but they're really challenged by, you know, really wanting to get folks into the right services, but they're not available. I keep talking to Carrie O'Clair about putting together, like making Dakota House bigger, because we need that. We need emergency mental health beds.
Yes.
Like that is a big one. So there's a lot of ideas and not a lot of money yet in that space. And the grant doesn't want us to, we can't invest in capital investments. It has to be programmatic, staffing. You know, right now I'm buying phones for folks, defendants who don't have a phone. So things like that, but not like cars and buildings and stuff. So anyway, sorry about that. Kimberly?
I had a question. Do you have, and I'm sorry I got on a little late, I had a problem connecting, but I know you have the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. Is there also an organization or an entity where all of the different like reentry programs are at the table? Because it sounds like there's quite a few different ones, and I didn't know, is everyone a part of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, or is there something separate for that so that those services could, you know, build upon each other? Then I have another thing to add after that. But
yeah, that's a great question. So the CJCC is made up of a specific group of folks, but we have supporting subcommittees, and actually Janice Statton's Partners for Reintegration group is the group that's picking up the reentry work. And so there is a subcommittee working in the reentry space.
Okay.
And I don't know if you want to ask her any questions about that, but yep.
No, I was just wondering if there was one entity where everyone was getting together so that they could collaborate on that. But then the other thing is a different. We were talking about job training, and we were just talking about how there wasn't enough providers available. I just wanted to let everyone know that in a few weeks or so, there should be guidelines coming out for a grant program through the state. It's the Montana EARN program for employment advancement right now. And it's used to, it's supposed to be a triad between a government entity, a schooling entity, and then it's industry led. And it's supposed to fill unmet job needs. And so it was a program that I seeded with $45,000. It was supposed to come out in January, but COVID derailed everything. So they're finally going to have it come out. And it was used successfully in Maryland for people coming out of the correctional system to give them job scale trainings and then actually get them employment. And so that would be something that would be great, maybe to fill treatment needs, but also to provide training for people coming out so they could actually get into some sort of job. And I'd be happy to work on that with you. It's my program, it's my baby, and I want it's a right now a trial thing. And if we don't use that $45,000, it will go away. So
what's the timeline for that?
You know, there isn't one that I've seen yet because the person at the Department of Labor, they haven't released the guidelines yet. But I would say once they're released, it would be 4 weeks.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
We have to put a strategic partnership available, government, school, and industry led, and I can help with that, but
okay.
It's something that we should utilize because it could really help.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at the questions. Going up to Lori Francis, I'm trying to remember if CJCC is working with community organizers and Common Good. Community organizers, yes, some. Common Good, no. I would love more information, and maybe Lori, you and I could chat about that, or you could tell me who a good person to chat about that with would be, because I don't want to reinvent the wheel. If we've got community organizers doing work in the criminal justice space, or they're interested in doing work in the criminal justice space, we need to tap into existing resources before we create new ones. And from Marilyn Marler, it would be good to reach out specifically to Missoula Interfaith probably Collaborative if you haven't already. They are very well organized and have a reentry service as one of their main foci. Yes, we're really well connected with Missoula Interfaith Collaborative. Welcome Back is a subcommittee to Partners for Reintegration, which is a subcommittee to the CJCC. So their connections in that space, probably we could work better together. I need to work on establishing better connections, but definitely they're in the loop and participating actively. I have a few returning citizens who reached out to me specifically from Welcome Back who want to get involved in the work we're doing, which I think is really exciting, because that's another area of underrepresentation we have in this whole space is folks with lived experience. They need to be at the table and helping us come up with new ideas, and keeping in mind that we don't know some of us don't know what it's like to be a returning citizen. Morgan Haney wanted to say, could you speak to how the other special populations will be involved, i.e. juvenile, LGBTQ+, and mental health? So in the juvenile space, we're currently putting together another expert working committee to the CJCC that's going to be working in the juvenile and young adult space. The juvenile space, because there are things we can do, but the young adult space, because suddenly one day they're a kid and the next day they're an adult. And the adult court system isn't really well suited to address the needs of big children in the criminal justice system. So that is a developing project. If anybody wants to be a part of that subcommittee, please let me know. There's 3 of us now. Great, Morgan wants to be a member. So Morgan, I'll reach out to you. Maybe can you put your email in the chat window? Or are you a county employee? I'm trying to remember where I know you from. Yes, okay, never mind then. So as far as LGBTQ+, that's an area we're lacking. We don't have a lot of work happening in that space, other than some of the training. So the trainings that we were going to do with law enforcement, the implicit bias and the trauma informed, the law enforcement folks I was working with actually recommended that we have an LGBTQ+ training as well. So it's going to be a 3-part training over 3 days, so that folks can come and go as needed. So that was their idea, which I thought was really cool. But other than that, we're not working in that space as much as we need to, and I'm very open to ideas. In the mental health space, there's a lot going on. We actually have another expert working committee called the Justice Alliance for Behavioral Health. And they're the subcommittee in that space to the CJCC. So again, not reinventing the wheel, because they were already working together and addressing these issues, and now they just have a pipeline to the CJCC. But there's a lot going on too related to the sequential intercept mapping work, you know, and the 10-year plan to end homelessness. Like, it's just all intertwined. I think we need like a process map at some point to keep track of everything. But I am definitely really open to other ideas you might have in that space. Lori, Francis, can we augment detention center health? Oh no, I can't hear you. Okay, she's gonna call in. While she's calling in, let's see. Marilyn is asked, can you use grant funds for emergency rent assistance? Not really. Which actually, I'd like to say I need to double check that. I don't know if we can. I would have to be linked to research because right now that's not something I don't think any jurisdictions are doing with their MacArthur grant money in providing rent assistance. So I need to double check that. My initial thought is no, but I will check. I'm just gonna write that down. Oh, Lori's about to call in, I think. All right, we'll just go on to Kimberly. One of the greatest unmet needs in all communities is for juveniles, especially those who run away. Currently, entities cannot house these youth overnight because of custodial interference laws. This is a vulnerable population frequently related to criminal justice issues. That's interesting, because when I worked in Oregon, I actually used to work with homeless and runaway teens, and we had a shelter for them that was voluntary and involuntary. So I don't know if there's like a Montana, I don't know how it works in Montana. But yeah, I think that's amazing.
It's our custodial interference laws that if you house a child overnight, you have to notify their parents, and frequently they're the ones who are abusing a child, they run away. And so then you have these juveniles who engage in sex for a place to sleep or other risky behaviors. Yep. So they're already abused, and then they're probably setting themselves up for other things. And yeah, it's something that especially targets the LGBTQ population because they are much more likely to run away. So yes, it's something that nobody's really taken on fully to push the change, but it is a big issue, especially well, for all of our population. And so if that's something that this group could work on at all. I don't know if MacArthur funds could go for that, or if we could figure out a creative way to make them go for it, but it's something that should be looked at.
Yeah, I worked at it a little bit last time because the Salvation Army wanted to have a program in place for those kids, but the statute is the problem, and I don't know how you get around.
Let's change the statute.
We have to, you know, Diane, I talked to Frank Garner about it, either last session or the one before, and he was interested in maybe doing something about it. So he might be a good ally in that.
Okay.
We can talk. Sorry, there's also a couple of people at the Sheriff's Department that are really interested in changing that, that I can let you know, Kristen, if you like.
That would be awesome. I mean, the idea behind the CJCC is to be a policy advisory board and to eventually take policies to the state level if they're appropriate. I think we've got an amazing group of people here that could be really helpful in that space, but it is by no means out of consideration. It's exactly what we want to do. We want to change some of these policies because that's part of the problem. So, Lori, did we get you back?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes, we did.
Oh, good. Sorry, I thought I had a mic on my desktop, but I still don't. So thanks for all the work and juggling 5 balls at the same time. I'm struck, as I think almost on this call, over and over about the intersection or lack of separation between recidivism and health and housing and social isolation and educational success. I know I'm speaking to the choir. I sent you a link. We have a meeting this afternoon with some healthcare people, the healthcare leaders in the community, including Deshane, around the moral determinants of health and how we take healthcare dollars and invest them in social change. That, by the way, Kristen, you do know MIC, which is the interfaith, is the same that Common Good. It's renaming itself, and we have 5 community organizers working with them. one of which is in all nations, one of which is in partnership.
Awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
great. So we are doing better than we thought.
And no, you are. And so it's just the names. And they're working on anti-racism issues. And
Great. Yeah, I mean, I've been working sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Who's their Native American liaison?
I don't know that. Casey
That's
Dunning
okay.
is there. Yeah. Casey
Yeah.
Dunning is, and I'm not, and what I said in here is, as I think about, we've been talking about the detention center and also the mobile crisis ideas with you guys, and you know, detention, health, Planned Parenthood is currently in there. Perhaps they could add a Native American staff member to help sort of sneak in the side door when you can't add that back into the detention center. But it is health, it is health, it is well-being, it's all the same stuff. And then I think I sent to Leslie and a few others, but I'll forward it to you, Kristen. I think we do need a framework. I think we need a structure that's a map, and maybe Lisa Biskievich, I heard maybe she has something where we can see all that's happening, but I think we could really leverage our work if we, when I think about people coming out and the complexity of lives that went in and the dramatic complexity coming out and asking people to seek out these various resources, it's impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible for those of us who aren't just coming out of
who have cars and a place to live.
No, it needs to be completely like, there's got to be one door where everything happens.
Yeah. Yeah,
Really
I know a lot of people
and supportive. Yeah.
Yeah. People are holding a lot of, you know, hope and faith in the navigation center that's going in out at the jail. But
right.
I think that we hopefully all are paying really close attention to that and making sure that, you know, our input, especially your professional expertise, goes into the decision making of that, because the idea was to have a one-stop shop for folks who are housing compromised, which, I mean, any lens you look at, that one-stop shop is going to have something for someone.
Right.
Thank you. And I also wanted to mention that Partnerships Health has also made a proposal for a medical legal position. Lori, could you give us an elevator speech on the MLP, just for folks in case they haven't heard it?
Sure, you would have probably just seen a posting. We have a posting right now for an
Yes.
MLP, Medical Legal Partnership Coordinator. So that is not an attorney. It could be, but we're not looking for that necessarily, somebody who has some familiarity with the legal system. And we're working with Allison Paul at MLSA, Montana Legal Services. And we will be adding that coordinator, sort of like our mental health coordinator, sort of like the housing navigator, with a lot of support from many of you, to help bring in locums attorneys who will be supported by social workers, case managers, behavioral health people, and physicians, so that when a client is working with them, they will have a lot of other support. And in a partnership with MLSA. And we'll come back, we pulled a group together, and I think Kristen, you were part of it, a number of you were. We'll pull that group back. Once we have the coordinator, that person will pull us back together again to say, what is, looking at community issues of empowerment and access to the legal system, and community response to that, not hiring one attorney, but in fact asking the community to step up.
Yep, great, thank you.
Sure.
And I just saw Kim Leaheath in the chat window has put, we really need to re-examine drug laws. Kim, do you want to give us some examples or some ideas?
I could talk forever on it, but
okay, you got 2 minutes.
Okay, so I just think that I think that everything that we do is worthwhile, but the reality is, you know, we're putting people into a felony system that is exacerbating further what their issues are. In Montana, you can possess one Loratab, and it's not uncommon to get either 3 to 5 years of probation. People don't need 3 to 5 years of probation for possessing a Loratab. On the same hand, you can get a DUI, it takes 4 to get a felony. So I don't think a lot of people really truly understand that in the community. I don't think they understand that you can have an Adderall and it's a felony. You know, the way that we address drug laws, the way that we put people into a system because we think that we're going to correct it or we're going to help them, is further really exacerbating a problem of a health crisis. Possession of a prescription medication without a prescription, personal opinion, not a department opinion, is that should not be a felony. There's no reason to put somebody into the felony system for something like that. So I really think that as a state, we have to address it. You know, you can assault your partner 3 times before you get a felony, right? So, I mean, when you really look at the way that we kind of approach drug laws as a state, it's very clear that we're putting people further into a system that is very well intentioned, but it's not appropriate. And we really need to look at people's behaviors. Like I tell a lot of folks that disagree with me on this, especially for people that are already on felony supervision, we have hundreds that sit in jail because they have a new felony for a possession charge that's pending, when we could actually deal with them in a different way. And something to consider is that for people on supervision, 10 minutes later, it's a dirty UA. You have to possess it in order to use it. So it's the idea that we have substance use disorder people, and the criminal code is a very easy one to prove. If I've got an Adderall, but I don't have a prescription, it's a very easy conviction as well. So food for thought. I can tell you that we have a lot of people in the Department of Corrections that's how they started their careers with us. We're very, very minor drug possession charges, and it is very standard for 5 years of probation for a first offense. It's just, we have to look at it. We have to look at it. I mean, I'll just leave it there.
You know,
Thank you. I appreciate that. Go ahead.
I totally agree with you, Kim, but if we're going to do that, it has to be prosecutor led, or it will die a painful death in the legislature, and everyone who supports it will be seen as soft on crime. So I know that Kirsten Pabst is interested in reentry, and I mean, you know that, Kim, and all that stuff. So if we can get the prosecutors on board, that's really what we need, preferably out of Billings and anywhere else, really, Missoula, fine. But if we're really going to make progress on that, that's what needs to happen.
Kimberly, can you tell us a little bit more about what, if possible, what the plan is for reentry in the county attorney's office, the reentry program, or do you know?
You know, I don't, but I have been I'm interested in doing like a post-jail reentry thing. We're talking with All Nations, and like, you know, you and I have talked about. I know that that Kirsten Pabst may be looking at some sort of prosecutor-led jail reentry diversion program. And I don't know the details, but I'm going to be following up with her on that. That's why I think it's really important to get everyone who's talking about reentry and diversion around the same table, so we can coordinate and leverage what's going on and work synchronistically on it. Otherwise, we may not have all the support we need to be successful. So I don't know anything other than there's something there.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating, because I mean, working in the Safety and Justice Challenge, you get to talk to people from across the country, and I have not heard about a reentry program sitting in a DA's office or a county attorney's office, and I'm curious about that. Like, is it a model program, or are there perhaps, like, is there some data behind why we would or would not want a reentry program in the county attorney's office? That's interesting to me, I guess, is what I want to say.
I would think that just why you'd want it there is you'd want the prosecutors on board from the beginning when you're talking about terms of probation or release or anything like that. And you don't want to have an adversarial relationship with your prosecutors. They want community safety as much as everyone else. They have certain tools. And so they would best utilize those tools in coordination, I think, with the jail, with the sheriff's office, and what that could look like. In coordination with, like Lori was talking about, mental health, everything is health related, and the health of our community. So if we could actually have a model of a really strong coordinated working group of all of the different people who want to help with reentry, including Maylin and what they're doing up there in the Tribal Defender's Office, then we could really be a model. But it takes a lot of work to coordinate. You know, it's like herding cats. There's a lot of people doing stuff, and we just need to be able to get together. But with Zoom and with the restrictions for COVID, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, that's oddly enough.
One thing about this coronavirus is we can meet a lot easier.
Yeah, go figure. We can do things differently. I just want to be aware of the time. It is after 1 o'clock. I'm happy to stick around. If anybody has anything else they want to chat about, I just wanted some parting thoughts is that we are having another one of these sessions tonight at 7, if anybody's interested in coming. Also, please let me know if you guys have any questions, comments, or suggestions about anything at any time. I'll put my email address in the thing, although I think all of you probably know about this because you got an email from me anyway.
Quick question though, is this money designated for adult or juvenile, or is it supposed to include both, or it's irrelevant?
Right now it is adult focused. So, but our CJCC is gonna, we're working on the juvenile piece, but yeah, it's for adults. And then, yeah, I guess just another plug. If you ever want to find out more, we've got, you know, a website on the county website where we've got all of our guiding documents and meeting minutes and whatnot. We also have Facebook and Instagram where I post prolifically just about interesting articles and other things that are happening and things that are happening in other jurisdictions, and then meeting updates and whatnot. So yeah, does anybody have any parting comments? Or I really appreciate your time. I think that this was pretty fantastic. Next steps are going to be to put a list together of all the recommendations, and we're going to put it out to vote and see what folks think, and prioritize it with a lot of as much engagement as we can, I guess. So be on the lookout for that. Tell your friends. Anyway, okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kristen.